slowly like opened my eyes, and I was looking around the room, and I still felt that feeling, that pulling of my heart. I can't believe this is happening, man. I can't believe this is happening. And I was still like this, and like in my prayer pose, and I was like, okay, I better shut my eyes before it goes away. How do I even start? Hey everybody, my name is Giovanni. You might know me from my music, you might know me personally, you might not even know me. You just stumbled across this video. I'm just gonna kind of talk about the things that I've been going through the past year up to now. I think I'm gonna like kind of backtrack a little bit just so you guys can kind of get to know me on a more personal level. I was born without a father. I don't know how old I was. I was probably like 1 to 3, somewhere around there. Really, really young. My heart's beating fast. I didn't want to say this, but I think I want to be as real as I can be. Jeez. I was molested. I was molested by my own father, and I'm not even sure if I'll share this, in the video itself, but I just wanted to start off as real as I can be. I've held this on for so long. I've never openly shared this. I can't believe I remember it. I suppressed it for so long that it was almost to the point where it didn't happen. And the reason I say it right now is because it's gonna come up later on in life when I'm talking about my life growing up. Okay, so I grew up without a father, no brothers, just my mom and my 3 sisters. So it was kind of hard growing up without any males. On the upside, with women, it made me understand them, what they go through, biological means, and just the fact that, women are always more open to talking, having a conversation. Guys are more like, they want to show off, look who I'm talking to, look what I have. I never meshed with that very well, because that's stuff that didn't matter to me. I grew up kind of normal. I was still kind of like a weird unique kid. I remember during Halloween I dressed up as a vampire, and those plastic little things that you put in. We went as long as midnight, cut up the inside of my mouth with those plastic fangs. I was dedicated. So I remember that. I remember dressing up, taking a shower several times out of the day and dressing, having a different outfit all throughout the day. And I remember my mom would kind of get after me, stop taking a shower. And I remember a friend, I think the first time I ever got introduced to, I guess, porn was through a friend. We were all young still, single digits. And one of them found it somewhere, I don't know where. And it was like a nude magazine, and he was showing it to everyone. It was me and some other kids, but I just remember seeing it. I was just like it felt dirty. I knew it was wrong seeing it, but I was just I've never seen anything like that before, so I was just kind of still looking. I was like, what is this? And so that was kind of my first introduction as a kid. I would just be playing hide and seek all the time, even if it was cold outside. I don't know if you guys have done this, but we'd be dumpster diving. I can't believe I did that, but it was fun. There was nothing. It was, I was a 90s kid, so we were always out playing, and we'd be doing stuff like that. I was with a friend. Remember, we dumpster dive and just look for stuff. But it was just all about the adventure. So, that was me growing up. And during that time frame, I did get bullied a little bit. These 2 boys, again, I was still somewhere in the single digits. I was really young still, on the bus ride home. And they'd pick on me. And just real quick, I actually told that guy off. Well, I didn't tell him off, but I said something back. I remember he was telling me and I bet you wear girls' panties, don't you? And I remember I went back at him. I was like, no, but you do. Actually went after him, got back at him. I usually get off by myself, my little bus stop area, they actually got off. I was like, oh great. What do I do? Because it was still like a while to get, home. This one kid that was the main one, he picked up this heavy like metal pipe from the street, and I was just in shock and disbelief, like, is this kid really gonna throw this at me? And then when he actually threw it, it was all slow-mo. It was like really slow-mo. I remember that. And I just slightly moved my head like out of the way. It was just instinct. Like I just kind of moved over, and the pipe went right by my head. And then when I looked the other way where the pipe was going, it like hit the street, and it was I knew it was like very heavy, because once it hit, it made a clanking sound. It was like real heavy like sound. I was just like, wow, this kid could have killed me, if I didn't move. He was throwing it right at my face. I couldn't believe it. And so when the pipe hit the street, I was like, oh, this is crazy, man. So like I started running across the street, to the closest like family house. And I remember going there when I was 11. My biological father started coming back into my life. So he wanted me to go with him. He was in Illinois, Logan Square, if I remember that right, Logan Square. I remembered some of the things that like happened, earlier in my life, but I was like, no, that probably didn't happen. And I've always been curious to have a dad around. So I was supposed to spend the summer with my biological father. It only ended up being 2 weeks. I couldn't like stand it. I couldn't stand there. He lived such a different lifestyle. I wasn't used to it. The environment was such a big change for me. I went from like wide open spaces to grass to like nothing but concrete. I'm like, where's the grass? Like, there's nothing but buildings, and you'd be walking around everywhere. Like, I didn't understand like how people would talk. They would say pop. I think I was with a cousin that I've never met before. I just met him, and I was at his house, and he was like, yeah, I want some pop. And I was so confused. I was like, pop? What is he talking about? And then he'd come back with the soda. Like, it was a soda can, and drinking it. And I'm like, if you're down in the South, you usually say Coke, and it's kind of like a general term, Coke. Like, Coke could be Dr. Pepper or Sprite, But just so no one's confused, soda, I'll just say soda. Yeah, but what confirmed my thoughts about my father, it's weird saying father or dad because he just was never around and never called him that. So there was one night when I wanted to leave. I think it was like the night before. He only had one bedroom, and I don't remember if I slept in the same room with him every time, or if I think I slept on the couch. When I think he asked me to sleep in the room with him, I'm not sure, but when I was sleeping in the room with him, I don't know, he said something that was weird to me, that it just seemed off. Like, he was like touching me. He was just in a very kind of like sensual way. I don't know, it was weird. It was just off to me. And when I was in the bed with him, as far as I could be, I just remember him saying something weird. I don't remember what he said, but it was just off. That stuff that happened before, yeah, you're definitely, like, you shouldn't forget that, because, it did happen. And so it made me sad, and I just didn't want to be there anymore. So I was only there for 2 weeks, so I left, went back home, and I was like, before that trip, I would always ask my mom, like, what's my dad like, why isn't he around, the typical questions, as a kid. And she didn't know really what to say, and I felt bad. After that trip, and as I got older, I was like, you know what, I've got my mom. She's always shown me love, and that's all I need. My mom, and she is the best mom. Like, really, she's helped me. She, even to this day, like, she still helps me. And I'll talk about my mom later on, because she's like a superhero mom. I want to say I was 12. I went to Wednesday school. It was Wednesday church school. I was learning. It was like Catholic, so I think it was my communion. So I went for a whole year, Wednesday, like after school, and I did that, and I got a sense of like God and Jesus. But I don't know. I think it was the people there. I remember when we would try to go to church on Sunday, I would wear my Slipknot shirt. And my mom would always say, like, why are you dressing that? You should dress better. And then I think some people would look at me weird. But I don't know, even deep down, like, even when I was younger, I always had a sense of wisdom. And I remember I'd say to myself, well, why would God care, what I'm wearing? if I'm going for him, he doesn't judge, right? And I mean, I get it, like wearing a Slipknot shirt or whatever, but I'm a kid, I was trying. And I remember people telling me, when I was through my teenage years, like, you just have a sense about you, like, you're just older. A lot of people would tell me that you're mature for your age. And I always knew too, deep down, I always had like a sense of wisdom. And I remember one of my sisters, she called me Gandhi. She would call me Gandhi because I was always wise. Like, I never said a whole lot to everybody, but whenever there was a time where I spoke, like, everyone would stop talking and listen to what I had to say, because it was always something like wise. And this was like in my teen years. I was always like the kid that was misunderstood. Like, yes, I was kind of like, dressed up all metal, but like I still had a deep sense of God. Like I told you, I went to that communion and I learned a little bit about it. The one thing that stood out to me was, your body is a temple. I don't know, it just never left me. And I think that's why I never really dated too much, or I didn't go too far. And so I really treasured my body. If you feel the same way, don't feel bad. I wasn't the popular kid, but then I wasn't like the nerdy kid where everyone would pick on me. I was kind of like in the middle. Like, I talked to some cool kids, and then I talked to some nerdy kids. So I was kind of like in the middle. I was more like the misfit kid, like the one that didn't belong. And the same thing in high school. I started dressing, in black, and started listening to some metal bands. Started getting into that. And I never really was the kid to like go out a whole lot, have sleepovers, even though I occasionally, like rarely ever did go to a friend's house. I don't know, I was always at home. I started getting into skateboarding, 12 to 14, somewhere around there. I couldn't hold my balance so well. I fell a lot of times. And I remember skateboarding, but I couldn't do any tricks. I don't know if maybe it was the board. The board was too heavy for me. Maybe if there was like a lighter board, maybe I could have done some cool stuff. And right in the middle of doing all that, I remember my mom like bought a guitar, and so my older sister and me, my older sister was playing. She was learning. She was actually getting it quicker than I was. Me, I had nothing else better to do. So when she stopped learning the guitar, she just left it around, and I picked it up. I started to take it more seriously, as my sister she was too social. She would always go out, hang out with friends. So, I stayed at home, and I started learning. The one band that really got me was Metallica. And I remember asking, a friend or two that knew how to play really good. I remember asking them what was tablature, because I was in the beginning, I was learning like notes. But it was a little too hard for me. But I found out about, tabs, like the numbers. And I asked my friends what that meant. And they were like, the finger placement. So, I picked that up pretty quickly. I got a tablature book. So I would literally just look at it. And since I already heard the song so many times, I would just play it. And then, I'd try to figure it out as I went. I'm like, oh, okay. And I was actually in school band. So I did kind of learn like the measure and the eighth notes, and then the quarter notes and the whole notes. So I kind of knew that, so that helps me kind of read and like go by the like how fast or like how I should hold the note. So I remembered that. The frontman is James Hetfield, so I kind of looked up to him. So once I started getting the guitar part down, I tried to sing, and that's how eventually I started to sing and play. And that was a little hard at first, but I just, like I said, I knew their songs by heart. So I just kept going and going. And then, eventually, I was getting better. I was getting really good. I started my first band. I want to say I was like 16, 17-ish. And it was really fun. A lot of drama came with it. With the people in the band. We played a lot of shows. It was really awesome. And then then I came up with my own band, and then I started going solo the next couple of years. So, I started doing my own thing. And you know what? I never dated a whole lot. I wasn't that guy either to like be with like so many girls. I think maybe when I was older I could have, but I was just very reserved. I didn't like giving myself to just anybody. Once I had a couple, here and there that kind of weren't good. It took some time giving myself to to somebody that I feel is, is special and who would give me some love back. So that's just like where I was coming from as far as dating. I want to say my senior year was where I was the most popular, I guess I can say. I was talking to everybody. My phone was always blowing up. I was trying to live it up. Not in a bad way, but just being social. I wish I could have done that more in my years in school, but I could at least say in my senior year, I was very, I talked to a lot of people knew me, so it was cool. Ironically, I think I met somebody like the month I was going to graduate. She was really jealous, and eventually because of her, I stopped talking to all those people stopped talking to me. I went from social to antisocial, and I'm not even exaggerating, dating that girl. And so after her, I was just like, you know what, I'm not going to date no more. I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to focus on my music. That's when I started to do live streaming. And some of you know me through that. When I was doing my music, or when I was just simply talking, I was live streaming a lot. And that's where I developed a lot of loyal fans. I was doing music videos. So yeah, I was doing some musical things. I was even performing live at times when I was doing my band stuff, but then I started my solo stuff. So a cool life. There's too much to say. I've done a lot. I've been in the newspaper. I showed up on that Talking Dead show. I wasn't on it, but I was a finalist. I was going to be on the show if people picked me. So I remember that was on live TV. What's his name? Daryl. What's his real name? Norman Reedus, yeah, him, the director of The Walking Dead, and Austin, I believe that's his real name, but I could be wrong. But they were all there. They actually saw my video live. It was pretty cool. I remember people were talking to me, "Oh my god, I saw you on TV," and I was like, "Yeah, it was cool." I think it was 2013 or 14. I don't know. I was living with my aunt at the time, and I want to say the first supernatural thing, but I wasn't sure because I was trying to be logical about it. I remember I was sleeping in my bed and my back was against the wall, so there was literally nobody or nothing behind me, and I slept alone, but I had this odd sense of something watching me. It was in the morning. If it was at nighttime, I would have freaked out. But it was definitely in the morning. I was just kind of awake a little bit, knowing my surroundings, but you're more asleep, if you guys know what I mean. So, and then I remember something just watching me, and I felt weird. But I was just, there's nobody. There's literally no one. The wall's behind me. And I remember all of a sudden, after going back and forth, no one's watching. And then I remember I felt like a fist just goes up the center of my back and moves me. I freaked out. But then again, at that time, I wasn't reading. I wasn't really into God. I always had God, but at that time I just wasn't into it. And I remember the logical thing. I was like, oh, it was probably just the muscles in my back. It was a muscle spasm, or it was something. I couldn't have had any ghost or any demon or spirit just kind of thrust me. So that was my logical explanation. And oh yeah, and there was actually another time, I think it was that same year. The hallway was to my right in the hallway. Everybody literally went outside. And I remember I was on my phone, and the hall was, right here. So I could see, in the corner of my eyes, if somebody was going down. I thought somebody had come from the front door and then just went down the hall. So when I looked over, I didn't see anything. And I was like, that's weird. Okay. So I just went back on my phone, and the same thing. A little bit later, it was the same thing. I was in the same position. Same thing happened. Saw somebody, kind of walking around and going down the hall. And I was like, and then I wasn't going to look, but then I just happened to look real quick. I looked, and no one was there. And I was like, okay, I know I saw something, So I looked outside, or I went outside, and, I was like, did anybody go down the hall? And, they were like, oh, we're all here talking. So I was just like, okay. So I closed the door, and I saw everybody, everybody there was nobody left inside. It was just me. So that's why I kind of freaked out. I was like, what is going on? I know I'm seeing something. And so the same thing, I'm on the phone, and then I happened to see something again. And I was like, oh my god, are you serious? I was like, are you serious right now? And then I was like, I know if I look, So I like slowly was like looking, and I saw like someone was wearing kind of like it felt like a white shirt with red that kind of mixed in with pink. So it was all like, it was just all mixed in, like someone's shirt. It was kind of like my body type. It was weird in the hall. I looked over, but as soon as I looked, like just in the corner, I could kind of see, but once I looked straight, there was nothing. Again, the third time, and I was like, man, this is wild. Like, what's going on? I was like, no, maybe I'm just seeing things. Like, what's going on? So that was the only time that I could remember that I couldn't explain. It was weird. Those two times, the thing with my back and then the hall. Maybe it must have been around 2014 to 15, somewhere around there, because that's when my grandpa passed away. And then when my grandpa finally passed away, it made me more depressed. And so yeah, it was a tough time for me. I was still kind of doing music, but eventually I think I got too depressed where I stopped doing it. It was the one thing that always kept me going. When I literally let that go, I didn't know what to do with my life. Hopefully I'm not missing. There's so much to talk about. Like, okay, so late November, December is the first like real supernatural thing that happened to me. Throughout my whole life, I remember deep down, I was like, if I died, I do not want to go to a place of torment. That was always in the back of my head. I didn't know what to believe. I mean, there's so much stuff, you get confused, so, but I always knew deep down in my head, in my heart, I was like, I do not want to go to a place of torment. So I remember one day I was praying. I remember I was laying on my bed. I was laying on my back. I was like, God or Jesus, please don't let me go to a place of torment. Hopefully, you'll accept me, or I'll be accepted. And as I was, kept praying, it was so weird, but so great too at the same time. I remember something bubbling up. It was in my heart. Like, it was all in my heart. And I remember it was like pulling towards like something. I was alone in my room praying. There was nobody around. If you're, having a magnet and then something metal and it goes to it. It was like my heart and then something, and it was like being like drawn to it, pulled towards something, like I wanted to go somewhere, or at least that's what the feeling was. All that, when that feeling came, emotions came with it. I don't know if I should say sad, or it was just a bunch of emotions, like happy, sad, tears of joy, grateful, thankful. I don't know if I want to say sadness, but it was something close to it, because like, why would I be sad? But there was like all these, it was all the different emotions all at once, and then all of a sudden I started getting this feeling of being told you're forgiven, or you're accepted, you're loved. And it was like a sense of like, don't worry, you're okay. It didn't make sense to me, but it was like I knew, like being told those things, nothing audibly, there was nobody around. It was just, I knew it deep down. It was a feeling. I knew it by feeling. It made me cry. I started crying. Being accepted is such a, it was such a beautiful feeling of knowing, of being accepted. And it was crazy, man. I couldn't believe it. Like, I was the one, you probably, probably going through this, like you probably don't believe, but it's not about making people believe. It was just sharing my experience, whether you believe it or not. But I couldn't even believe it. Like, it was happening to me, and I was like, oh, how is this happening right now? Like, I've never experienced something which I found out it was supernatural, was God's love. I didn't know what was going on. It was just like too much to process. It was crazy. Like, to know there's actually something out there. I could still feel like that pulling feeling in my heart. I still had and then my eyes were closed the whole time. And I remember I was like, okay, I want to open my eyes just to make sure this is real. Like, I'm not making this up. And I remember I was like, okay, please don't stop. Whatever's going on, don't stop. And then I was just like, I slowly like opened my eyes, and I was looking around the room, and I still felt that feeling, that pulling of my heart. I can't believe this is happening, man. I was looking around all the room. I was like, I can't believe this is happening. And I was still like this, and like in my prayer pose, and I was like, okay, I better shut my eyes before it goes away. Okay, I was like, I just wanted to look to see if it was real. And then so when I closed my eyes, and it was still happening, and then eventually after some time, it like kind of like just went away, and I didn't know what to say. I was so mind blown. I think I told my sister too, because she was around, I think, and I don't think she believed me. she believes now, because a lot of stuff has happened recently. A lot of stuff has happened. 2020, late 2020 was like the start of that supernatural, like, God feeling. Wow. I think it took me a while to finally, like, say something to my family. Now I'm sharing it with everybody. You know, this was almost 2 years ago. We're in September 2022, and this month is significant too, because September 2021 I was in the hospital, and I'll get to that story. Feeling God's love, it was so pure, and I'm grateful that I got a chance to feel that, and I'm still yearning for it. I'm still waiting to feel that again. It's a feeling that you want to feel all the time. To feel God's love, it was a feeling like no other. I didn't explain it enough, and I never understood when people say, God loves you. And sometimes I forget to this day, like, how do you know? I'll say something like that, but then I'll like, oh yeah, I remember that time in my heart. I felt that was like a feeling you don't get here on earth. To feel God's love, it's not an earthly love. You can't understand it. Like, it's too much for you to like even get or to understand. You can't fathom it. It was like 1,000,000 times more than anybody can ever love you here on earth. Even more than your parents, even my own mom, which is crazy to say because she loves me. She's my like number one. My mom's helped me. She got COVID and she was still helping me and everybody else around the house somehow. I don't know how. And she went to go visit me in the hospital too. Like, she's like such a great mom, man. She helped me out so much. Even when I was here at discharge, she'd come in, feed me, in the morning, afternoon, dinner. Like, she'd come in. I had my little table set up here. So I say, she's like a superhero. So I gotta like talk about my mom real quick, because she's done so much for me, and she still does to this day. I remember going to the bathroom one morning, just doing my business, releasing some liquid. The 33 came to my head for some reason. It just popped in my head, and I was like, I don't get it. I just went about my day. The next day, same thing. I was in the bathroom doing my business, releasing some liquid, and again, 33 came up again. I'm like, why am I thinking of that number? And I went about my day. Literally, the third day is whenever I started to really question it, because 33 came up again. I was doing my business, releasing some liquid, and 33 came up again. I always think the worst. I'm like, am I gonna die at 33 or what? Like, what's going on? Why is it? And then I remember telling the girl, because that girl was very spiritual, and the one that I think at that time we were already kind of dating. She was the only like spiritual person I could talk to, so I was telling her about it, and then she led me to angel numbers. 33 significant, blah blah blah, whatever. She was very kind of like new agey, and then I'll get into that later. I didn't take it seriously. I was just like, yeah, okay, 33, yeah. I remember her telling me, she's like, no, this is serious. Like, that's a very, it's a very powerful number. I remember her saying that, and I was like, okay. Sometime later, a couple days later, I think I remember being told to get across and to get a Bible. I was with my mom. She was going Christmas shopping, and I was like, okay, this is the perfect time to get a Bible. And I was gonna get one at Walmart. I wanted to buy a new one. I remember going out with my mom, and she went to the phone store. We never really would go around this area, and I remember seeing a used bookstore just next door, like literally next door to the phone store that my mom was going to. I'll just go there and see what they have. And I saw all the Bibles. I was looking through all of them. I couldn't decide on 3 of them, and there was one that stood out to me. It was a gray one, and it stood out to me because I had like, in the beginning of it, it had some questions and pictures and stuff like that. Like, it was saying like, what's the Bible about? What is God? And it had questions that I had in my head. Like, what? I'll get that too. So I bought 3 of them, and I remember looking through the first 2, and I didn't see anything, and I got frustrated. I was like, because this is the part that I missed. It's because for a couple of weeks before I was actually gonna go buy a Bible, I felt like there was some message to get, but I didn't know where. Like in my body, like inside of me, it knew. I was trying to get a message somewhere. Like, there's a message I need to read, or I need to receive, but I don't know where or how. I just know that there's something out there that I'm trying to get a message from. So all the way leading up to finally getting the Bible, And I kind of like made the two click. I was like, well, maybe it's in the Bible. Maybe that's what I'm looking for. So that's when I finally went to I went out with my mom, is whenever I bought the Bibles. And when I was looking through the first two, I was like, no, there's nothing here. I got frustrated. I took a nap. I woke up. There was one more left. That was the one that like stood out to me. So I was like, well, let me look there. There's something. Like, I feel like there's something I need to receive. I was looking through, and you know what? I didn't even pay attention. When you save a page and they had like little strings, there was 2 of them in that Bible, and I didn't know. And that's when my eyes popped. I was like, no way, don't tell me. I was looking through, I didn't see anything. I was kind of disappointed. I was like, great. I was like, there's one more left. I was like, please let it be this one. So I was flipping the page, got to the saved page, and literally as soon as I turned it, 33 at the top right of the page stood out. I was like, I saw 33. I was like, no way. And it ended up being Psalms 33. And I started reading it, from the start of it all the way to the top right. And literally the 3rd verse, it says, let me see if I can get it. I was like, I couldn't believe it. Because as you guys know, I'm a musician. So there was music, and I wasn't passionate about it. I told you guys I was depressed. I stopped doing it. This is the ESV version. So shout for joy in the Lord, O ye righteous. Praise befits the upright. Give thanks to the Lord with the lyre. Make melody to him with the harp of 10 strings. I was like, I can't play a harp. I can't play 10 strings. I was taking it literal. And then when I was reading the 3rd verse, it says, sing to him a new song, play skillfully on the strings with loud shouts. And I play guitar, I sing, so I was just like, what? That is the one that I was most focused on, because it was the 3rd verse. There's something about threes. So when I saw the 3rd one, it just blew my mind. The way I read it, it says, or make music or sing to him a new song. I remember reading at the bottom, and it was like an alternate way of reading it, or make music. So I was like even more mind blown. And I remember laughing. I was like, what? Like, God, really? Like, you want me to get into music again? But you know why? Like, I haven't been into it for so long. And I remember I was like, okay, let's try it. So I started, writing here and there. Now that I look back, I think I was too distracted with the girl. We can get too distracted with relationships. So I think I was putting too much attention to the relationship and not paying attention to God enough. But it wasn't until when I broke up with that girl, I want to say 6 months later, it was like already summertime. Unfortunately, I hate saying this because, once I go through a breakup, that's when I'm like the most creative. Like, creative juices started flowing. Once the breakup happened, that's when I started reading into, get into the spiritual stuff. I bought books. I don't even read, but I got into the new age at the beginning of 2021. That the girl I was like in a relationship with, she kind of threw that into my life, and I started learning more, like numbers, energy healing, crystals, all that stuff. I remember I got in contact with a friend that I didn't talk to for years, and she happened to be really into it, but she stopped doing it. But because I was just getting like so into it, I kind of got her into it, and I feel bad. I wasn't trying to. I was just that it was more for me. And I was asking her questions, and then I remember we do like little moon rituals. It wasn't nothing like bad. It was more like letting go of our past, letting go of our like traumas, letting go of stuff that we want to better ourselves with. And it was just stuff like that. We do little rituals or do the sage. I remember when I went to her, I flew to Phoenix, and I bought a bunch of crystals, literally hundreds of worth. I don't like to buy stuff, but I got so into it. I don't know, I never could get into the crystals, but they always say like you should get crystals because and then you gotta do your chakras, all that stuff, guys. Feel like they're gonna help you, it's healing you. I went to Reiki healing, like I really went all out. So when by the time summer came around, that's when me and the girl broke up. And I was really trying to find answers. Even though I bought the Bibles, I wasn't reading them. I got caught up in this spiritual stuff. I got mixed into it because I got a supernatural experience, but it was God. That's how sneaky it could be, you know, when you get into New Age, because you don't realize you're into it. It kind of blends in with stuff, especially when they blend Christian stuff with that New Age now. You get sucked into it. It puts you in the demonic side of things, guys. They worship the earth, or they're mediums, or tarot cards, angel cards, oracle cards. You know, you're opening demonic portals. You can get sleep paralysis, or you get like a fear in your sleep. You know, you feel a presence, guys. You feel a presence in the room, and it's scary. It's demonic, guys. There's this guy named Everett. He's great. He explains things in such a great way. I'll link him down somewhere. A girl that was into astrology. I think her name's Angela. She has a podcast named Heaven and Healing Podcast. She's done a terrific job explaining the music industry. Like this is not just the New Age. This is with music. This is with movies, items that you have in your home. Like, this goes all around, guys. You can listen to her stuff too. It's really great. Doreen, that's how I found out about going to Christ. It's Doreen Virtue. I was gonna buy her cards. Her angel cards. I had this fascination with talking to angels, so I was gonna get her cards, but when I went on her website, she was talking about, in her bio, it was saying how she went to Christ. You know, she's like, don't buy my cards, don't buy anything. It's deception. And I was just like, what? I remember reading it while I was into the New Age, and I remember like, what? Why? Like this. It kind of got me like a little, not like too mad, but I was just like, what? Why? Like, this stuff is cool. But it never left my head though. Like when she said, I'm a follower of Christ now. So months later is whenever I finally decided to follow what she was saying. But before we get there, this is near the end of 2021. August 2021 is when I got sick from COVID. I got sick from COVID, and I think that changed my life. I was suffering so much at home. It got bad, so bad that I couldn't sleep anymore, like in peace. It was like, I remember I'd be panicking, like doing that. And for some reason, I would always try to go to the bathroom and just turn on the shower, and like the water hit me. It was, I didn't know, I guess it was panic attacks. I've never had them before. I would just fall in the shower and just let the water hit me, because it would kind of calm me down. And everyone got sick. That's how it spread. And then, like through the vents or whatever, like we tried to isolate, but it didn't work. Everyone got sick eventually. I was the last one. I stayed in my room. The funny thing, when I look back, I remember my mom would make me lunch or dinner, and she would make me a plate, and she'd put some foil on top, and then my door has like a gap, a pretty big gap, so she would just like slide food like under the door. I remember I'd just be about my day, just kind of watching something, and then I would hear the little slide, like shh, like something, like a little plate. I look over, and like, yeah, sure enough, I was like, oh, my lunch. I remember my mom laughing. She said, it's like you're in prison or something, like I'm just giving you food. Then so I got admitted to the ER, and I remember, just to get somebody's attention, nobody told me like there was a thing that I could just pull or something. Like, nobody told me anything. There was like a cart, and I just started to make noise. I was like banging on something. I was banging on the cart, like for someone to come. And it took a long time for somebody to finally like come. I think someone had just started the night shift, and came to see me. They brought me a blanket finally. I was like so cold. It was such a bad night. And the next night, it was, I think it was the next night or that same night, I don't know, some girl was next door, and I could hear her screaming. So I was there for a couple of days, a couple of nights, and finally they took me in an ambulance, and I finally got to the hospital. On the way, I remember seeing everyone. The whole lobby was full. Like, people, there was like beds in the lobby. They put the oxygen on me. I couldn't breathe the whole time. Even at the ER too, I was having trouble breathing. But thankfully though, when I was into the New Age, I was getting in the habit of meditating. So like certain breathing exercises. So I remembered that when I was in the hospital, and it actually kind of helped me, like talking to myself. So just breathe slow, breathe slow. Obviously you go through a physical challenge, but you don't think about the mental challenge when you go to the hospital and you have a sickness like that. Before I even got to the hospital, when I was still here at home, like sucking it up, thinking that it was going to go away, I remember my mom told me it'll be okay, just give it some time, keep taking the medicine. And I remember telling my mom, I don't usually tell my mom anything negative. I don't think I'm gonna make it. And it was so weird for me to say that because I'm not usually somebody that says that, especially to my mom. So fast forward to the hospital. Everything's so vague at that time. Everything's blurred. I was medicated, drugged up, in pain so much, so I don't remember a whole lot of people that were talking to me or that were coming into the room. I had to sleep on my stomach. That was like a protocol for people with COVID, because when you're on your back, there's too much pressure. So they were like, you gotta sleep on your stomach so you can kind of relieve that pain. I was at this point, I was dealing with so much pain. My breathing was really hard. Covid pneumonia. I was very weak in my body. I couldn't talk. Every time somebody would come in, I'd give them hand signals. So I remember two ladies came in. They were gonna flip me over. This was late at night too. And at this point, I was already kind of giving up. I was already going through so much. I was already going through a lot when I was at home trying to suck it up. Because in my family, we would like to go to the hospital. we're like, we don't have insurance, constant, people would come in, take my blood, they would poke my arm all the time, every 2 hours, they were always drawing blood from me, constantly getting woken up, throughout the night, that's just how it is, they gotta take tests, they were taking my x-rays, it was just always all throughout the night. And I remember being defeated. I started crying. I remember that. Bedridden, couldn't do anything. And I'm not somebody who likes to show emotion like that, especially to people I don't even know. It was very a vulnerable moment for me. And whenever I was crying, one of those ladies went to my side, and I remember she grabbed my hand and she started praying. I remember I had this cross with me on the table somewhere. I couldn't wear it because they were constantly doing x-rays on me. So I remember, I don't know if she grabbed it and had it with her and put it on my hand. I can't remember that, if she did that or not. But I remember she grabbed my hand and she started praying. I remember her saying in Jesus' name, I don't remember everything that she was saying, but I remember I couldn't talk. I was so weak. But in my heart, I was just I was kind of going with her. I was okay, yeah. So that was significant. So remember that, because at that point I was already giving up. It was such I guess when I look back on it, it was such a beautiful moment of faith, because even at that time, I was just doing the new age, but I was kind of stopping at that point. I always had God in my life, Jesus, but I never had that relationship. And I think most people have that. So I went along with the prayer. I was crying still, and I was all right, let's just get through it. And I managed to do it. There was actually this nurse, Gabriel. He watched over me so much. Even when I had panic attacks, I remember him. He would tell me chill out, basically. And I remember he scared me at one point because I was laying on my stomach. I thought he left the room, but I was scared for him to leave. I wanted somebody around, because I was panicking. I was pushing through. I was just breathe, just breathe. I was just talking to myself a little bit. I couldn't move my body, again, I was weak. So when I barely moved over and I just happened to move my head, there I saw him at a distance, and I freaked out. I was what is he doing? And I kind of freaked out at first, I was what is he doing? He's probably just watching over me. And I was and then I started thinking, that's cool. He didn't leave. He stayed to make sure I was okay. I'm the most private person ever. And I remember him being the first one to clean me. So we have that connection. We have that closeness now. But he was a great nurse. I have to shout him out. It's funny how his name's Gabriel, because he was kind of my angel watching over me. I moved a lot for some reason. I don't know. They said it's not normal, but they constantly were moving me around. It's I was getting worse. I needed more air, more oxygen. They put me in the ICU unit. I spent a month in that hospital, guys. A little over a month. And, September 28, 21, I was in the hospital already. So a year later, we're September 2022. And I'm just so grateful. that I'm here, being able to talk to you guys. I couldn't talk, and I'll probably show clips.
I got so much more than I needed to. All these projects I still haven't done a lot yet. They just switched my oxygen from 13 to 11. Normally I should be at 3,000 breaths, practice every hour, inhaling, so I'm gonna do that.
I actually spent all that time alone for a couple of weeks. They didn't allow anyone to come, so I was at my lowest moment in my life by myself, no family, and it really took a toll on me. I just started crying when I first saw my mom, and I haven't seen her in like weeks, and I hadn't seen anybody. There I finally get to see her, and I only got to see her for like 10 minutes because she showed up when visitation was already like at the end. And I remember before my mom or any family could see me, I remember I was going through such a hard time, and I remember talking to God. Like, how funny, because I woke up one time and I was just like, man, and I was still going through so much pain, and I was like, man, God, just get it over with already. Like, if I'm gonna die, just let it happen. Like, why am I going through all this pain? Little did I know he actually did like save me, and I'll get to that. It's been such a journey. I never thought I'd be here, talking normal, being able to sing again. I'm grateful for it. Being able to take a shower by yourself, using the bathroom and cleaning yourself, like, without anybody having to do it for you. A lot of people overlook it because it just comes natural to us. So I'm just very grateful for it every day. I pray and I thank God for breathing, for being able to talk and walk, and just doing the basic things, because those things I was unable to do for a long time. And actually, a couple of days ago, exactly a year ago, it was the first time where I got to stand, with a walker and with some assistance around, and I got emotional, just being able to stand again, because I didn't think I was going to be able to. I couldn't, for the whole time I was just bedridden. I remember when they started first helping me walk around on the walker, I could barely walk, maybe 10 steps, and then my oxygen was already dropping. I always had the oximeter on. It would drop down to the 80s, 77, I think. They kind of knew my limit. I remember being at home. I had like these little buttons to like call my mom in case I needed something. So I'd have stuff like that, or like an intercom. We'd like talk to each other. She would like help me walk. I would walk just in a little circle around the room, and I'd be done. Nothing too bad. I remember my sister helped me to the shower. I actually had a at-home oxygen machine. Like, I was in the bathroom with the oxygen on. Once I got home from the hospital, it made me so much more grateful about life. Like, when I would look out the window and I see rain, and I was like, I hope one day I get to feel it and see it and just feel the air outside one more time. So yeah, it's been a long journey since last year, and then it just made me more focused on God too. I remember in late December I bought a 1-year Bible, so I've been reading it every day. It shows the Old Testament, New Testament, Psalms, and Proverbs. Thanks to Doreen Virtue, she recommended that. And I know way more now about the supernatural, because last month really opened my eyes. August 2022, something crazy happened. I didn't think about it at the time, but that's whenever I got admitted into the ER. A year later, my niece gets delivered in the middle of our Bible study. Like, we had just started it too, and my friend's casting out demons out of her. and she's got her own testimony. She went somewhere else in the spirit realm. She experienced some stuff, guys. I don't know if she'll let me share that with you all, but amazing stuff that I think everybody should hear. We didn't get to finish it. I actually filmed her, but we didn't get to finish it because something weird was going on with her. I won't talk about it too much because I got to say it in another video, but man, when she started laughing and saying no, like, that's whenever it really hit me. I was like, man, this stuff is for real. God was talking to her, speaking through her, like, about me, about my sister. It was crazy, guys. You gotta watch it. If they, my niece will let me kind of share some of that stuff, you can see that. But man, like, God was talking through her. And I remember that night of the deliverance, she spoke to me that I was a survivor, and that stuck in my head, right? So a couple of days later, I asked her, what did you mean by that? Because what I thought was, whenever I was in the hospital, when you said I was a survivor. And she said, yeah, that's it. And I remember telling her about the two ladies that came in, and the one lady was praying for me, and I was like joining her. My niece is shy. She doesn't really project herself. Her posture changed, like, she was like this. She always kind of like had her hands like ready to speak. So like, I kind of like saw a difference in her. And so she was talking, she was like, yeah, that saved you. You were going to die. She kept saying that too. She was like, you were going to die, that night she kept saying it. You were going to die that night. My niece was talking, but God was talking through her. She said God was ready to take me to heaven, which was nice to hear, because I was like, okay, because I didn't want to go to a place of torment, right? But it was nice to hear that, but not really in a way, because I was like, I didn't want to go yet. Just that little bit of faith, guys, is crazy, man, what it could do for you. But she said, because I showed a little bit of fight left and I showed my faith, he let me stay here on earth. And that's why I said it was funny, because maybe a week or a few weeks after that, and remember when I said, God, if you're gonna take me, just take me. Little did I know that he saved me, weeks before. And I was just going through the motions, recovering, slowly. I was like, why? Why me? Why did I get it so bad? The virus. I found out my dad, he died from the same thing that I had, Covid pneumonia. I want to say July 2020, but I didn't find out until September, I think, or September of 2020, which is weird. Another August-September timeline. And it made me sad, even though we weren't close. He was my blood, like, he made me. And despite the things that happened, I wasn't ready to make amends. I still kind of had some bitterness, but he found me on Facebook, sometime before 2020, and I was like, what does he want? He would try to talk to me, and I was kind of not ready yet, but I wasn't like mad either. I wanted to make amends. I wanted to try and have a relationship, but it was kind of too late for that, because little did I know at some point 2020 was going to be his year where he was going to pass on. And so I think back, like, I had the same thing that my father did. Why did I live? I was questioning that. And I was thinking back, well, maybe because I was younger, I was able to fight it through. But, confirmation through my niece, God speaking through her, I could have gone too. God's grace let me stay. And I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And, through my niece, he was like, you'll find out, in time. But yeah, I want to do something great, I want to help people. I've always wanted to help people. I thought through music and maybe still too. There's a lot to talk about in part 2, so I don't want to give everything away. But I just wanted to talk about all the way up to like COVID and recovering, guys. So yeah, that's my story. Hopefully I didn't leave anything out, and if I did, I'll say it in part 2. But one thing I do want to say, if there's anybody in the hospital right now, you're watching this, or if you have a family member or friend in the hospital, pray for them. Because there's power in words. There's power in prayer, guys. Really. Even if it's somebody who doesn't believe in God. God can extend his love and grace to them too, because of you, that does believe. I'm not gonna say, guarantees that nothing will happen to them, because if, it's just God's will. If they're gonna take them, they're gonna take them or leave them here on earth still. Try to pray. If you've never prayed to, just say what's in your heart. It doesn't have to be intricate, it doesn't have to be a specific way. Just speak it in your heart. Even if it's short and simple, God's hearing you. Invite God into your life, Jesus Christ into your life, and you'll be surprised, what's gonna happen. He's working more than ever. There's evils rising, but God's coming out too. He's showing up. At that time when I was praying, that I didn't want to go to a place of torment, I wasn't like, the good Christian. I was reading the Bible every day. I wasn't. I was still like into the new age kind of. I was still kind of lost. But when I did that, and I was talking to God, that happened to me. I felt His love. And for everybody it's different, guys, but I'm just sharing my story. And you never know. Like, what do you have to lose, man? Invite God and Jesus Christ into your life and see what happens. You're definitely going to want to hear part 2, guys. Part 2. Because I'm going to talk about a whole lot more supernatural stuff. Through God, demons, everything, man. I remember sharing on my Snapchat. If some of you saw that, you got to see something before all the others. And it's a real eye-opener. And just watch deliverance videos, guys, because that's the truth. You're going to see the truth. You're going to see the power of God. Daniel Adams, that I watch a lot, and Bob Larson, Isaiah Saldivar is another one, John Ramirez. I'll leave it in the description below, all the channels, man, that I watch, that I'm learning from, where they talk about items, they talk about, the open portals from the demonic realm, from everything, guys. You'll learn all that stuff. And I'll share my experiences. Like, it was like a Stranger Things episode for real, where I'll talk about in part 2 that happened, because there was some crazy stuff that happened. I'm going to talk about in part 2, so keep out for part 2. Alright, thanks guys for listening. Letting me be vulnerable. I shared some stuff that I'd never told anybody, or I told very few people. My name is Giovanni, and you'll see me next time.